Okay. Quick and pretty right here. My family, Ohio. So it was a sad one, but it was a good one. Her son and daughter. That we had really good. It was a I try to walk my dog a lot. You get a lot of ice cream. Oh, say something to Terry?
No.
You want to turn it down?
Please.
Get our, we're caucusing, we're gonna go with Tiana. Well, I am. Wendy, read the resolution. It's for ACE. Very important.
Absolutely.
And then there's a bunch of people here. I'm going to like them to come up and introduce
Okay,
themselves
absolutely. Yeah.
Afterwards, and then Joanne. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to the November 26, 2018 meeting of the Durham County Board of Commissioners. I will share the public charge. The Board of Commissioners asks its members and citizens to conduct themselves in a respectful, courteous manner, both with the board and fellow citizens. At any time, should any member of the board or any citizen fail to observe this public charge, the chair will ask the offending person to leave the meeting until that individual regains personal control. Should decorum fail to be restored, the chair will recess the meeting until such time that a genuine commitment to the public charge is observed. As a courtesy to others, please turn off cell phones during the meeting. And I will now ask that we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Are there any adjustments to the agenda? Commissioner Recco.
Madam Chair, we have a significant number of people here from the ACES Task Force. I would appreciate it if you would move the resolution from the regular business agenda to the ceremonial items, resolution on ACES.
Do I have a second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded, moved by Commissioner Recco, seconded by Commissioner Carter. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have a number of announcements this evening. I'm going to just kind of skim over them, and detailed information can be found on the Durham County website. We have the third annual John W. Hatch Fair Health Lecture on November 27th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Shaw University. This is free and open to the public, and registration is required, it says, but you could probably look into that if you would still like to attend. American Tobacco Tower Lighting is this Friday, November 30th. Join the Durham community for the annual American Tobacco Tower Lighting at 6 p.m. At the American Tobacco Amphitheater at 300 Blackwell Street. There's also the Tree of Bikes that will be on the Burt's Bees patio. Also at the conclusion, there will be a parade up to Blackwell Street to the CCB Plaza for the City of Durham tree lighting. So there'll be two tree lightings on Friday night at American Tobacco and at the CCB Plaza. One is at 6:30. I'm sorry, one's at 6 o'clock. I think the second one is at 7 or 7:30. Yeah. Feedback on the light rail project is sought, and there is a draft environmental impact statement that is open right now for its supplemental assessment. That is open until November 30th, 2018. You can find out more about it on the Go Triangle website or on our website to give any type of written comments or feedback. November is National Adoption Awareness Month, and Durham County Department of Social Services is celebrating our adoptive families during November. And if you know of anyone who is interested in more information on becoming a foster or adoptive parent, please call 919-560-809-92 or email fosterdreams@dconc.gov. We're having an MBK Durham suit drive. Donate confidence, and when you donate a suit, you're not just giving someone a piece of clothing, you're giving them a chance to look in the mirror and feel good. That's a big deal because when you feel good, you can make things happen. And donations are being accepted through the end of the month for gently used or new professional attire. Can be dropped off here at this building, across the street at the Admin 2 building, or at the Human Services building at 414 East Main Street. The Durham County Board of Commissioners will select a chair, and new elected officials will be sworn in on Monday, December 3rd, 2018 at 9 a.m. at our work session. The new members of the Soil and Water Conservation District will be sworn in, and I want to let everyone know that the sheriff's swearing in is normally held here, but they are expecting a really big crowd, and so that is actually going to be located at noon at Greystone Church, 2601 Hillsborough Road. Normally it's held here, but we did not have capacity for the crowd they're expecting. So if you would like to attend, that will be at noon at Greystone Church. Innovate Durham Demo Day is on Tuesday, December 4th, 6 p.m. at the Hayti Heritage Center, 804 Old Fayetteville Street. And there were 6 startups were selected to work with local government staff at the City of Durham and Durham County, and they've been testing out their ideas for 12 weeks, and you can come to that and learn more about what they have been doing. The City of Durham Holiday Parade and Fun Fest is coming up on December 8th, 2018. It will take place at 10 a.m. And will be happening, let's see, it looks like it's going to start on Blackwell Street between Moorhead Avenue and West Lakewood Avenue. Let me get that straight. It says it begins at 10 and ends at 4. I'm not, this is a little confusing here. Well, I'm not quite sure. It looks like the parade is at 10, and I assume it's going to be on Main Street like it always has. But then there's also going to be events like sledding that are going to be on Blackwell Street from 1 to 4. So two separate things.
At the ballpark.
At the ballpark, okay.
On Blackwell Street.
The 2019 general reappraisal is happening. Will be effective January 1st, 2019. You can find out more about this process by visiting our website or by calling 919-560-0300. You can download the Here Comes the Bus tracking app to find out where your students' bus is, and students can also take advantage of that. Rabies vaccination clinic is every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 3005 Glen Road, and there is a $10 fee, cash only, and please bring your ID. You can sign up for Alert Durham by going to www.alertdurham.com to get text or phone messages about severe weather events, road closures, missing persons, and evacuations. And lastly, please get involved. We have 43 active boards and commissions, and we need your help. So please consider joining one of our boards and commissions. Are there any other additional announcements? Commissioner Howerton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to announce that on Saturday, starting at 10 o'clock, there will be Black Women Expo that will be held at the Marriott, starting at, I think it goes from 10 to 3. So it's about Black women in business, and I'm sure probably about anybody that's entrepreneurs in business. So going down and engage in with the community about businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, thank you. We have minutes to approve. We have our regular session, October 22nd, 2018, work session, November 5th, 2018, and regular session, November 13th, 2018.
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Hill.
Request. A minor point of discussion, if I may, before we vote.
Sure.
I just wanted to request that the minutes start to include the time at which we adjourn. I was really wanting to look at some trends around that, and I noticed we don't have that in the minutes, and I think we should have that.
Fine.
Thanks.
Thank you. So moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Hill. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the minutes are unanimously approved. And I want to recognize the staff because it looks like we are completely up to date with our minutes. Is that correct? Wow, that's really impressive. So thank you, Monica and Terry and anyone else who's been working on the minutes. That's a huge accomplishment. Thank you. Okay, we have some ceremonial items tonight. The first is a special resolution honoring the life and legacy of Dr. Brenda Estelle Armstrong. Many people in the community know Dr. Armstrong from the different roles that she has played in our community for decades, not only for her work at Duke, but also for all of her work with the Durham Striders Club, where she has been known as Coach Doc. And I'm glad that I see Frank Davis here, who is the director of the Durham Striders, and I just want to make sure I don't leave out any other community members who are here, or any family members, anyone else here for this resolution. So Frank, if you don't mind coming to the podium to receive this in honor of Dr. Armstrong, that would be great. And I will first share the resolution. The Durham Board of County Commissioners resolution honoring the life and service of Dr. Brenda Estelle Armstrong. Whereas Dr. Brenda Estelle Armstrong, a native of Rocky Mount, North Carolina, received her undergraduate education at Duke University, attended St. Louis University School of Medicine, and did her postgraduate training in pediatrics and pediatric cardiology at UCLA and Duke, respectively. And whereas she was among the first African American students to attend Duke University as an undergraduate and challenged authority as one of the students who protested seeking changes to the racial climate at the school. And whereas Dr. Armstrong became the second Black woman in the United States to become a board-certified pediatric cardiologist, and whereas for more than 2 decades, Dr. Armstrong worked in the Duke University School of Medicine as Associate Dean for Medical Student Admissions and Senior Associate Dean for Student Diversity, Recruitment, and Retention. And whereas she was affectionately called Coach Doc, as she coached the youth track club Durham Striders student athletes while serving also as the team's physician. And whereas Dr. Armstrong was highly respected as a remarkable role model for generations of medical students, and in 2017, she was inducted into the Student National Medical Association Hall of Fame. And whereas she earned numerous honors and awards during her pioneering career, including the S.L. Katz Pediatrics Outstanding Faculty and Teaching Award, the Duke University Distinguished Faculty Award, and the National Medical Association Council on Concerns of Women Physicians 2018 Woman of Medicine Award. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, members of the Durham County Board of Commissioners, do hereby recognize, to pay tribute to Dr. Brenda Estelle Armstrong, a legendary physician, coach, mentor, and amazing life force who gave her talents unselfishly to help others. We call upon all citizens to celebrate the life of Dr. Armstrong, who dared to make a difference, especially in the lives of the least among us. She leaves an enduring legacy of compassion, leadership, and service. This 26th day of November 2018, Wendy Jacobs, Chair, James Hill, Jr., Vice Chair, Heidi Carter, Commissioner, Brenda Howerton, Commissioner, and Ellen Reckow, Commissioner. And for those who don't know, we lost Dr. Armstrong on October 7th, 2018. So thank you, Frank, so much for being here with us to receive this resolution, and we'd love for you to share any comments or words if you would like.
Oh, yes. Thing about Doc, Coach Doc, known in the track world, a lot of the people, even some of our parents and kids, didn't know she was a real doctor. She was very unassuming. At track practice, she was coaching track. She was our team physician, but she coached track. And the same thing in the medical world. A lot of people in the medical world didn't know she coached track. She was actually with the program for 37 years. That's a long time. Coach Blunt, a lot of you may know Coach Blunt, brought out years ago to give the kids physicals, and she came out, and somehow, I don't know when, she started coaching, but she stayed with the program. And we're very fortunate to have had her in the program, because normally we have about 300 kids each year in our organization, and I have her as head coach over the 12 and under. That's the young kids. And we start with 5, 6-year-olds. And she was very instrumental in a lot of these kids later on getting scholarships, because she made sure they started out right. They had to come to practice, bring report cards, the conduct, the discipline, and everything. She had some pretty high standards for these young kids. And once they stayed in the program a while, it just grew on them. And then they graduated from high school and went on to college. We've had about 300 kids get scholarships. People may not realize that. Academic scholarships, athletic scholarships, or whatever. We've averaged about 7 kids a year getting scholarships. If they stay in our program, we will get them in college. That's what we do. And we work with a lot of mainly the underprivileged kids, the ones that aren't supposed to succeed. They do. We've had all kind of people come through our program, different occupations, doctors, lawyers. They always say doctor, lawyers, engineers, dentists, all this other stuff. But we've had them in all occupations. And we're going to miss her. You can't replace her. We can't replace her. We're going to go on with the program, but we can't replace what she did. We just have to find a way to make the program keep going as it is. So if you didn't know Doc, she's about that tall. When she's with these little kids, you can't see her. She's in the middle of, but she was our head chaperone. She made sure that these kids were chaperoned at the meet properly. She screened all the chaperones, and she picked them. And she actually wanted to serve as a chaperone for the younger girls herself. So we're missing a great person. And if you came to her ceremony at Duke Chapel, it was packed, it was full. You had people from all over the place, former med students. And you talked about what she did. She started this diversity program at Duke, recruiting black and minority students. And one thing she always told me, she recruited them, but they graduate. 100% of those kids, she just didn't get them because they were black. She got them because they were good students. And a lot of people don't realize that either. She initiated that program. So I could talk for hours about Doc, but we're going to miss her. So thank you.
Thank you, Frank, for sharing all of those stories with all of us. That's really special. And I want to also open up to any commissioners, any comments from anyone? Commissioner Recco?
Well, I think that following up on what was just said, I would just say that Dr. Armstrong was short in stature, but really big in impact. Her impact, what I know is her impact through the Striders, and her impact on young people was transformation, not just in the development of their bodies, but in their character and in their spirit. So she left us too early. She really.
Commissioner Hill?
I knew Dr. Armstrong as a patient, and I threw. I did not run. I threw for the Durham Striders, and those years throwing shot put, discus, and javelin, I would see her there, and it was amazing how much she gave back, and I think that's how she really blessed this community. Whether it was admissions into Duke Medical School or kids who needed that kind of direction and that focus and that guiding hand. She was a tremendous woman. She was an adoptive mother, and she just did tremendous things for our community and for our children. And because of that, I think she will definitely be missed. Like Frank said, we can't replace her, but we'll all do our best to help children and move them forward like Dr. Armstrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Howerton?
Thank you. I just want to acknowledge her and her long reach, because it wasn't just in Durham that she reached. She reached my grandchildren in Greensboro through my son that was here and met her and had conversation with her. And I had 2 grandkids that were making D's in school. And after that conversation with my son, something shifted. They are straight A students today. Now, I don't know what she said to him, but whatever she said to him, it transpired in those kids. So I just want to acknowledge her and thank her for her long arm of reach. Thank you.
So tonight, this is just a very small gesture on our part to really celebrate Dr. Armstrong and her legacy for our community, and she will be very sorely missed by many, many people. And Frank, if you don't mind coming and accepting this resolution, and I'll acknowledge Dr. Armstrong. So tonight we're recognizing somebody else who is with us tonight, and Captain Aleem, if you don't mind coming up to the podium tonight. And it looks like you may have some other special people with you tonight. Looks like your family is here, your wife and your children. Yes? Well, so welcome. Maybe why don't you all come up? So we just wanted to invite you here, Captain Aleem, just to recognize you and for, you may say it was just all within the line of duty, but we are really grateful to you and the work that you do every day, and want to make sure that the community knows about an event that happened on November 1st. I saw it on I think it was WRAL or one of the TV programs, the news stations, about how you say you happened to be in the right place at the right time, but ended up being able to save the lives of 2 children, and then also the mother when you witnessed a car accident that happened on I-85. So I will let you tell a little bit more about what happened that day so people can hear the story from you directly.
I was actually traveling on I-85, and I saw a car. She passed another car, and then she just went straight to the median. To the guardrail. When she hit the guardrail, she shot back across the road and went up the embankment and just started flipping. And there were Pampers and everything coming out the back of the car because the window was shattered. So when I went to the vehicle, we heard screaming, but didn't exactly know what was going on inside the vehicle. So obviously, for obvious reason, I couldn't climb in the sunroof. So I actually had to go to the back and actually get into the car, and there were 2 kids that were hanging upside down. And I was able to get the kids out. But the beautiful thing about that was when I actually started bringing the kids out, there were citizens who had stopped, who were right there to take those kids from me. So that was a powerful thing. And one of the kids who had just had a transplant a week and a half earlier. So I didn't know until I grabbed her and saw the feeding tube. But both kids are doing well right now, so is Mom. So that was a beautiful thing.
Wow, that is some story. Well, Captain Aleem, I know that your kids, your sons are very proud of you and your wife, but we're also really proud of you and again, so grateful for what you did and to save people's lives, children's lives like that in our community. I just wanted to see if any other commissioners wanted to share any comments. Commissioner Carter?
Well, I would quickly say that Captain Aleem has been a hero of mine for a long time. I really have tremendous respect for him and the work especially that you did with Durham Public School students. So thank you then, thank you now, thank you going forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Recco?
Well, as I've said a couple of other times when Captain Aleem has presented to our board, I go way back. I've known him for almost 15 years. He was a school resource officer at Riverside High School when my son was there. And it was interesting how he made a major positive impression on my son in terms of the words that he would greet him with during the day, the things he talked about with him. And he made that same impression on many, many other students at the high school. So what strikes me is your character shows how much you care for our young people, and that was shown that day when you stopped and helped save those 2 young children. So we greatly appreciate all the work you've done for so many years for the children and citizens of Durham County.
Commissioner Howerton?
Just quickly, given the conversation that we're having today around officers, and most of it is negative. So to have someone like you in our community is extraordinary. So we thank you. And I say thank you from a place of a mother, that it wouldn't take much for me to start going there. But I can imagine that mom, when you pull those kids out of there, that's something she will never forget. So thank you.
Commissioner Hill?
Captain Aleem, I want to thank you. I know I hear first responders all the time say, "Well, I was just doing my job," but putting yourself in danger, you've done it daily when you were with the sheriff's department and doing it on that day. you and those other citizens. I thank God for you and how you were protecting people in our community. And that's a wonderful thing to see people who are so selfless, who will go out and put themselves on the line in danger. Don't try to get through that sunroof.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for what you did and for what you continue to do for the people and the citizens of Durham County. So thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
So thank you again for being, doing what you do every day, but also for being in the right place at the right time for that family and those children and that mother. And so we just want to salute you and thank you. We're very grateful.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, we did, it was just inviting him here. Okay. Yeah. And you also do not need to feel like you need to stay for this meeting, you and your family. Feel free, feel free. We appreciate you being here, but you don't feel like you need to stay. So we also have the ACES resolution, and Commissioner Reckow is going to read that and also welcome all the people that we have here.
Right. So, about 2 years ago, we formed an ACES, that stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences Task Force. And it has blossomed into a fairly large task force. I think we've got about 20 to 25 very active members, and then other people who are on our listserv. And a number of them are here today. I'd like to invite them up. And we will, after I read the resolution, we'll have you introduce yourselves, and you're welcome to make a few comments if you would like. So why don't you come up? Either podium, I guess. I'd have a little more room over there. I want to thank Gail Harris for helping to put this resolution together. She and I worked on it. And even though I have laryngitis, I'm hoping my voice holds out because there's some really important data in this resolution that I want to share with everyone here and with the general public. It's Durham Board of County Commissioners resolution to support the actions to become an Adverse Childhood Experiences, or ACEs, informed community, and the development of an ACEs Community Resilience Plan. Whereas research over the last 2 decades in the evolving fields of neuroscience, molecular biology, public health, genomics, and epigenetics reveals that experiences in the first few years of life build changes into the biology of the human body, and that in turn influence the person's physical and mental health over his or her lifetime. And whereas adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, are traumatic experiences that occur during childhood, including emotional or sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, household dysfunction, including substance abuse, untreated mental illness or incarceration of a household member, domestic violence or separation or divorce involving household members that can have a profound effect on a child's developing brain and body and can result in poor health during the person's adulthood. And whereas the discovery of ACEs offers each of us an opportunity to see a person with new eyes, instead of asking what's wrong with that child or adult, we should ask what happened to that person. And whereas the original 1998 ACEs study which surveyed approximately 17,000 adult Californians, found that 2/3 of participants had at least one adverse childhood experience, and 1 in 6 participants had 4 or more adverse childhood experiences. And whereas the ACEs study also found a strong correlation between the number of adverse childhood experiences and a person's risk for disease and negative health behaviors. And whereas researchers found that a person with 4 or more adverse childhood experiences was 2.4 times more likely to have a stroke, 2.2 times more likely to have ischemic heart disease, 2 times more likely to have chronic pulmonary obstructive disease, 171.9 times more likely to have a type of cancer, and 1.6 times more likely to have diabetes. And whereas researchers found that a person with 4 or more adverse childhood experiences was 12.2 times more likely to attempt suicide, 10.3 times more likely to use injection drugs, and 227.4 times more likely to be an alcoholic. And whereas these early adverse experiences literally shape the physical architecture of a child's developing brain and establish either a sturdy or a fragile foundation for all the learning, health, and behavior that follow, and where strong, frequent, or prolonged stress in childhood caused by adverse childhood experiences can become toxic stress, impacting the development of a child's fundamental brain architecture and stress response systems. And whereas early childhood offers a unique window of opportunity to prevent and heal the impacts of adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress on a child's brain and body. And whereas the emerging science and research on toxic stress and adverse childhood experiences evidence a growing public health crisis for the state with implications for the state's educational, juvenile justice, criminal justice, and public health systems. And whereas a child with 4 or more ACEs is 46 more times to have learning or emotional problems and more likely to be involved with the criminal justice system. And whereas a critical factor in buffering children from the effects of toxic stress and adverse childhood experiences is the existence of supportive, stable relationships between children and their families, caregivers, and other important adults in their lives. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the Durham County Board of Commissioners, do hereby urge the entire Durham community, neighborhoods, faith communities, organizations, and businesses to become ACEs informed and supportive of strategies that strengthen individual, family, and community buffers that can prevent or alleviate the effects of adverse childhood experiences and adverse community environments. Be it further resolved that copies of this resolution are shared broadly throughout the community, along with notices of upcoming screenings of the movie Resilience, The Biology of Stress and the Science of Hope, or the opportunity for community partners to host a screening. And be it also resolved that the Durham County Board of County Commissioners endorses the development of an ACEs Community Resilience Plan and development of appropriate supports for children and families. This, the 26th day of November 2018 in Durham County, North Carolina. Wendy Jacobs, Chair, James Hill Jr., Vice Chair, Heidi Carter, Commissioner, Brenda A. Howerton, Commissioner, and Ellen Reckow, Commissioner. So I want to just say a few words of background and then recognize Joanne Pierce just for a few additional words of background. As was alluded to in the resolution, the American Academy of Pediatrics has identified ACEs as the biggest unaddressed public health problem in the country. And one of the main reasons is the lack of public awareness. As a result, one of the first things that our task force has been doing the last 2 years is helping to focus attention on the issue by showing the movie Resilience many times all across this community, in schools, in churches, in branch libraries, at community meetings. Recently, Downtown Durham Rotary hosted a screening of Resilience at the Carolina Theater. It was attended by over 400 people. So it shows you the kinds of interest, but probably thousands of people have seen Resilience during the past 2 years with all the community screenings. And I want to do a special shout out to Fred Johnson with the Duke Community Medicine. He has been dogged about showing this movie. Our staff, both Ben Rose, our social services director, and Gail Harris, have shown this movie so that virtually all of the public health and social service employees have seen the movie and discussed it. And that's the other thing. After the screenings, we have facilitators there. And I particularly want to mention Rachel Galanter with the Exchange Family Center and Wanda Boone, who couldn't be here tonight with Durham Tri, because I know that they have been at many screenings helping to facilitate, and I'm sure there are others who have helped in that regard also. We do have a few initiatives underway. We have a pilot with the Duke Pediatric Clinic on North Roxborough Street, and Dr. Debbie Best is here, who we work closely with to help identify children. We want to be proactive so that some of the things we read about that can be extremely negative related to ACEs, that we're intervening early. So we're screening children with well child visits and then doing a warm handoff to a Healthy Steps coordinator at the Duke North Roxborough Clinic. We're hoping if that pilot is successful, that type of intervention will be expanded to other pediatric clinics. I know I'd like to ask Joanne Pierce to come up, the Deputy Director of our Health Department, to mention a couple of other initiatives that we have underway.
Thank you. Good evening. Through this task force's efforts, we've been able to incorporate through this pilot with our maternal health case management program. This pilot allowed the task force to identify opportunities to incorporate the ACE and protective factors surveys into our OB clinic at the health department. We were looking at prevention, and we were able to assist moms to be and offer additional resources as needed. So that was just a high-level example of one of the things that this task force participated in and worked to develop the tools that would be appropriate for the mothers to be in this program. Another piece that was added, we have a positive parenting program. It's also known as Triple P. It's a program that is designed to help parents identify ways to provide them skills and resources to help parent in different ways that they'd like to do that. And we were able to incorporate the Triple P program to raise awareness about ACEs with our moms-to-be in a centering program. And a centering program is where our pregnant moms moms-to-be will come together as a group and meet regularly, monthly, at least monthly, where they receive health care information and training. So we've incorporated this entire ACE and protective factors surveys into there. So if there are opportunities for us to provide additional resources, because we know from the resolution, as early as we can get information, it would be helpful. And lastly, I just want to talk about the community resilience model training. Approximately 100 partners attended a foundational one-day community resilience training program. And again, that was coordinated with our partners with Duke and Fred Johnson and company. And they trained community members not only to help the community resilience model trains community members to not only help themselves, but to help others within their wider social network. The primary focus of the community resilience model is to educate individuals about the biology and neurophysiology of trauma, as well as teach simple biologically based wellness skills which can help reset and stabilize the nervous system. And we also call it CRIM. Through CRIM, individuals learn to read sensations connected to their own well-being, and it's called the resilience zone. And the goal is to help to create trauma-informed and resiliency-informed and focused communities that share a common understanding of the impact of trauma and chronic stress on the nervous system and how resiliency can be restored or increased using this skills-based approach. And lastly, I want to talk about the fact that with their busy schedules, at least 5 of the folks on this task force and 7 other community partners attended a 4-day intensive community resilience model teacher training certification program provided by the Trauma Resource Institute. And the training offers organizations and the general public training opportunities to become CRIM teachers. So at least 5 on this task force are now CRIM teachers, and they can provide that foundational training that 100 of community participants attended at Duke Regional Hospital. So now we're really, I'm excited that, and I think we're all excited that we're actively building our capacity as a community to become more trauma-informed and resilient. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Joanne. That was excellent. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that County Commissioner Brenda Howerton has been a stalwart member of the task force from the get-go. And through her connections as a former president of the Association of County Commissioners, certainly helped publicize our work in Durham, across the state, and to help link us with some of the initiatives going on around the state. So Brenda, thank you so much for all that you've been doing to help us and also to help people around the state. And through her work, we actually showed the resilience movie at a special convening that you had last spring on Thrive, helping all children thrive. And that piqued so much interest that it's actually sparked some ACEs work in other counties. And then last summer, we showed it at the State Association of County Commissioners meeting. And the discussion afterwards was so rich that people actually didn't want to leave when the session was over. So that it just shows you what's happening. And in fact, part of the reason in our resolution we're calling for doing a community resilience plan is Wake is now beginning to talk about doing a plan, as is Mecklenburg County and several other smaller counties. So we do think it's time, while we started some low-hanging fruit initiatives, it's important at this point, we believe, to really look at the whole lay of the land in our community and do a full-blown plan so that we can address this critical need in a very comprehensive manner. And with that, I'd like everyone here to briefly introduce themselves. And to start with Fred.
I'm Fred Johnson. I'm the Vice Chief of the Division of Community Health and the Director of Northern Piedmont Community Care. I was here last week. I'd be remiss if I didn't let you all know that the captain's wife, Yolima, is a phenomenal painter. If you ever get a chance to see her work, it's great.
I'm Kathy Murray. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and actually a trauma therapist. And I was so delighted with all my trauma therapy skills that I thought I would only be using one-on-one, actually find that it can be taught to community members, parents, and, you know, it just really has made me passionate about this work. I work at Duke Diet and Fitness.
I'm Kelly Sullivan with the Center for Child and Family Health and with Duke University Medical Center. And our center specializes in helping children and families recover from the impact of trauma and to also help prevent it. So we're just delighted about this effort in our county.
Good evening. I'm Krista Gogler-Reeves. I'm the Community Alignment Specialist at Duke University's Family Connects International program. So Durham Connects is a universal newborn home visiting program that started right here in Durham and is now being disseminated under the name Family Connects in over 30 sites across the country. And so every day there are nurses here in Durham County that are going and visiting families with newborns. The goal is to see every family regardless of what you look like, how much money you make, where in Durham you live, and are really addressing toxic stress as they're doing their infant and maternal assessment. So thank you for that.
I'm Debbie Best. I'm a pediatrician with Duke Children's Primary Care and also the medical director with Family Connects International and Durham Connects. As a pediatrician, Commissioner Reckow mentioned how we see the effects of adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress every day. And so I'm really thrilled that we are in a position as a community to address this together, both clinically and through programs through the community. So just very excited to be part of this.
Good evening, I'm Karen Appleyard-Carmody. I'm a psychologist at the Center for Child and Family Health and also the director of early childhood prevention programs at the center and also work at Duke University Medical Center. I just want to say that I'm so grateful to the commissioners for what you're doing tonight by taking this stand and for all the work that you've put into it so far. Showing your deep and abiding commitment to the public health of Durham County is amazing. And setting the tone for the rest of the state is wonderful. And we look forward at the Center for Child and Family Health with being a partner in continuing the work to prevent and treat the symptoms that come after trauma and ACEs have occurred. Thank you.
I'm Rachel Galanter. I'm the executive director of the Exchange Family Center, which is a 26-year-old Durham community resource that makes children's lives better by strengthening their families, teachers, and communities, because caring adults are the key to children thriving now and as they grow. They can't raise themselves. They need to be able to turn to adults and have those adults make safe, responsive spaces where they can be successful. And it's great to see the county investing this energy, not just in doing something, but in thinking strategically about how do we best use our resources to make sure that we have the biggest impact we can, and that we're not just focused on what's wrong with you or what happened to you, but what strengths do you have and how can you grow from here?
Hi, I'm Catherine Plow from Families Moving Forward, serving homeless families with children. Our children are some of the most vulnerable to experiencing ACEs, and so I'm just really thrilled to be part of this work and that the county commissioners are investing, resources in it. It's really thrilling to me.
Good evening. I'm James Sutrell, Director of Student Services for Durham Public Schools, and I think it's very obvious how this work helps to address the whole child and the need to focus on the well-being of all our students so we can improve education outcomes. So we're really glad to have the community support.
Madam Chair, I don't know if, there's one more person.
One more, uno más. My name is Alexandra Valladares. I am a clinical researcher with Duke. I'm actually at the Roxborough site, so not working with the serum, working on another study, but super glad and excited to hear about how it's rolling out with families. I'm also a DPS parent and also was in the superintendent's strategic plan and actually met with James Fred and I went to meet with Dr. Maddox, and so we're excited about how the community resiliency model and these tools can get to our kids. I think our kids need as much support, as many tools, and so I'm super excited about seeing how schools take on and teachers are trained and everybody's aware that, you know, kids having an episode, you know, mean that kids need support, and hopefully we can curb suspensions. I'm also a Latina in the community, so this is really exciting for me as somebody who, you know, is very connected to my community in the grassroots. And so wanting to get this out to everybody out there, and, you know, there are a lot of things that are going on, so it's like this is definitely something that we can all look at as adults, as kids, as a community. So many different layers. I'm super glad, super proud of my community, super proud of the work you're doing. Thank you for opening doors for this to be rolled out and, you know, for the resolution. So thanks so much.
I'm glad you came and hope you will attend our task force meetings. Joanne, please be sure to get her email and we'll get you on the listserv. That's terrific. And one thing we didn't mention, and James has been informing us, we have a number of schools that are moving towards being trauma-informed schools. That's great also. Do any commissioners have any comments?
Commissioner Carter.
Hard to think of anything else to add. You all have said quite a mouthful about this issue, which frankly I do think is probably the most critical issue for our community to figure out how to address, to have widespread prosperity, starting with, you know, children. So I fully support this, and actually many of you mentioned resources were contributing towards this. I don't know that we have actually targeted that many financial resources to this specifically, but I hope that we will. I personally would start by asking Durham Public Schools, what do you all need to help us perhaps, you know, have more trauma-informed schools, just because there's 33,000 children that it could reach in a systemic way. So maybe some conversation could be had along those lines. And it's so nice to meet you tonight.
Commissioner Howerton.
I just want to add that our governor's wife came to Durham to a presentation, so this is one of her things that she supports wholeheartedly. So we've got somebody in the house that supports it.
So I just want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you to Commissioner Recca for all of your leadership on this, and Commissioner Howerton. I don't think, you know, there's anything more important, and I'm really excited about the idea of Durham being a trauma-informed community. You know, we're doing a lot of work around racial equity training and with all of our staff and people in the community, so that we bring a racial equity lens to everything that we do. And I think it's the same thing with toxic stress and understanding ACEs. It really touches every single thing that Durham County does. You know, first responders, social services, we didn't talk too much about that tonight, but the social services department is also implementing some practices now. We received a grant related to domestic violence, and so it is training first responders to recognize the signs of domestic violence, so that they can then be able to connect the children that are in that home directly to mental health services. And so this is what we talk about when we're talking about the preventative kinds of actions that we can take. And so this is how we actually change the way that we do things. Another example is Durham Directors Group. We've been talking about the impact of violence, and that we need to have a community response to violence. For instance, when there was a recent shooting at McDougal Terrace, that we need to have people that go right into the community and start working with the children. So this is how this can really change the way that we do things. It's really exciting. So what I was going to ask Commissioner Recca was, we do need to share this resolution with others. I was going to suggest off the bat with the Board of Education and the City Council. And I don't know if you have other suggestions of who else that we officially share this resolution with. But I couldn't hear you.
We'll discuss it.
Well, yeah, so we
have
should
a
just.
meeting coming up
Yeah.
next week, and we can discuss.
So I think we want to be very deliberate about taking this opportunity to do that. So thank you all. Very exciting.
And Madam Chair, you raised a good point. We had a big discussion. We've had 2 meetings of discussion on doing a plan. And at the last meeting, what we decided is we actually think we shouldn't we want to do a broad community resilience plan, not just focusing on children. Because you're absolutely right. The adults in our community who work with children and just because of their own experiences need help. And so many of our employees, our detention officers, our sheriff's deputies, our EMS personnel, et cetera, are dealing with crises daily and weekly and will benefit from resilience training. So we're actually going to take a broader approach. That was the decision of the task force last.
Absolutely.
It goes back to thrive. Children can't thrive if the parents are not thriving. The children have to live in the household with the parents. And if we're not doing what we need to do to make sure that parents are thriving, our children don't have a chance.
Right. Yes.
You want to bring everyone up.
What would show? So we'd ask you to come forward, and we would love to just acknowledge you all and receive the resolution.
Take our hands. They don't know the drill.
Really appreciate your work. Hey, Rachel. Love you, part of this. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're everywhere doing important work. Fred, good to see you. Just let us know, Here and ask. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. As the main shower of the movie. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Oh, great. I'm so happy you're here. And please don't leave without.
So we have a number of consent agenda items. 18-111, 6 through 18-1140. Are there any, does anyone have any questions about any of the items or want to pull any of them?
Move approval.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Reckow, seconded by Commissioner Howerton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the consent agenda items are unanimously approved. We have a report from Central Piedmont Community Action, and I'm not sure who's here with us today. Okay. Are you Natasha Elliott? Okay, welcome, Natasha. If you don't mind just coming up, and I don't know if there's anyone else with you, you're welcome to bring them with you. Is Cheryl Andrews here? Okay. So if Cheryl would like to come with you, it's up to you. Okay, well, when she comes back. So if you could tell us about the work you're doing and your report. Thank you.
We actually came in January 2017 to present, and from that meeting, some great things came from that. In working with the former director of DSS, Michael Beckett's, we came up with a referral form, and we've actually been using that, and we've received quite a few referrals from DSS, so that process has been going very well. Cheryl stepped to the restroom, so this report is just some highlights of the things that went on in program year 17-18. We served 187 families. Of those families, 14 rose above poverty, which is the 100% of the federal poverty guideline, which is established by the federal government. The annual change in the income was $7,588. 30 of those individuals in those families gained employment. 17 gained better employment that included medical benefits. 52 of those completed education and training. 7 secured safe and affordable housing as they were formerly homeless. We provided educational and employment supports for 51 of those families, and the total expenditures in Durham County was $622,006. During the year, we had quite a few accomplishments. We provided quarterly money management workshops and orientations for all of the newly enrolled participants so they can get a handle on their budgets and know, if you have additional income, let's see how we can work on saving and achieving some of your goals like home ownership, entrepreneurship, those kinds of things. And if for some reason you get a decrease in income, let's see how we can work that out too, because sometimes I don't think people realize, all it entails. We also had an open house that Commissioner Carter attended in Durham in August, and I think that went really well, and we garnered quite a few additional partnerships from that. We have an annual Family Fun Day that we just recently had again, and we had quite a few partners there, and that is it's around Halloween time, but it's kind of geared towards parents spending time with your kids, because I think sometimes you have to work, and so you don't get to spend that time with your children. So we gear these workshops for them to spend time with their families. We also partnered with Wheels for Hope, and that helps individuals get cars. So if transportation is a barrier, I think it's $618 currently for them to get a vehicle. And so we work with them to get insurance and those kind of things so they can get a vehicle, a reliable vehicle. So I'll let Cheryl step in now and she can add anything.
And I apologize, my timing is terrible. I thought I would have time for a break. And I would just like to add, Natasha went over the accomplishments. I would just like to add that the support that we provide with our partners to our families is so important. When families are struggling economically, struggling with their life circumstances, and don't have other positive support networks, it's so meaningful to have a program like ours to come to. We have case managers available full-time through the week, Monday through Friday, that are available to work one-on-one with families to identify economic barriers, to directly mitigate those barriers either through our program services or by referral, and that are there to encourage and shore up families while they work on their self-sufficiency goals. So we are so proud to be able to serve Durham County. We have made strides since our last visit to you to get out into the community, to meet our partners, to develop collaborative relationships with them, and in fact, last program year, for the first time, we accept our participants by referral only from other local partners. That way we can target participants effectively and ensure that we are leveraging resources to their benefit. And that is something that has really helped us to meet and know and understand our partners and how we can work together more effectively.
I just want to add a couple of things. We have board openings in Durham County. We currently have 2 private individuals, but we have no one from the public sector, and we have no low-income representation. So we would definitely like to fill those slots if you or anyone else, if you know of someone that would be interested. Also, we have volunteer opportunities available. We are currently in the process of putting together a community clothing closet, and we will work with partners such as DSS, Volunteers of America, the NC Works Career Center, Families Moving Forward, In Hunger Durham, and just a bunch of others, so they can send their participants to our closet to get clothes, whether it be business attire, just anything if they've lost their home or things like that. So we actually partnered with Durham Softball, and they did a fundraiser for us to get some items. And so we're now in the process of putting everything together so we can get that launched in January of 2019. So I think that's it, and we appreciate your time. If you have any questions,
So we appreciate you coming back to us with this report. How many board members do you have right now, and how many of them are Durham representatives?
currently we have 12, and of those 12, 2 are Durham. So we definitely would like 4 total from Durham, because in this program, we serve 4 counties.
Okay. So if you could get to our clerk
Okay.
that information, and we can add that to our announcements and really put a push in, because it's very important if you're serving the Durham community to have Durham represented on your board.
Absolutely. We agree.
Very important. And in terms of the referrals that you are you taking new referrals now? Do you have openings?
Yes, we are.
Okay. How many slots do you currently have open?
I don't have an exact number on the openings, but I can get back to you with that information.
Okay.
We're funded to serve 90 this program year.
Okay. So if you could tell us, follow up with how many slots you have open, and then also list who you are currently getting referrals from, who you're partnering with, and then we can also make suggestions of anyone else that we recommend and help make those connections.
Thank you very
for
much.
you.
We will do
We can help do that, connect you to people. And are you connected to the current DSS director, Ben Rose?
Yes, we are. In fact, most of our referrals come from DS.
Okay. Okay, great. And where is your location?
We're at 1007 Broad Street in Durham,
And your hours?
8:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday.
And what's the phone number?
It's 919-797-0888.
So if you could also, when you send us the follow-up information, just, well, I guess to Terry, so we can include that also, just to let people
We
know
definitely
that.
will.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Howerton?
So thank you for this information. I would like to be in touch with you. In September, I had a poverty summit scheduled, and we had to cancel it because of the weather. So we've gotten that back on the calendar. We haven't gotten everything finalized yet for April the 12th. So as a tentative date, I would love to talk with you about being a part of that and being able to share some of the information that you have. If you will, Terry will have that information. And as we finalize everything, I'd love to have more conversation with you about being a part of that.
Absolutely.
Process, yeah.
You hit on something that we're always saying, if the parents aren't solvent, the children can't thrive. So we definitely, acknowledge that.
Well, this is a conversation that we don't have a whole lot of conversation around, is around poverty. And it is a huge conversation, not just for Durham, but across the country. And if we can impact that, I think impacting that will impact our children. Because when kids go home and they don't have food at home, they, you can't study if your stomach is growling.
Absolutely.
So, and if they don't have a decent place to live. So parents have to be able to maintain, and I heard you talked about the number of people that you've been able to get employment. That's impactful. So I look forward to having more conversation with you around that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Commissioner Carter?
Yeah, thanks so much for your presentation. Just so I understand better, the $622,000 that you list there as your total expenditures, is all of that the CBDG funding, or is it's a mixture of funds from other
No,
sources?
all of that is the community services block grant funding. We, for the whole 4 counties, we got last year 1.2 million, and 622 was allocated for Durham.
Okay, great. And you said that lines up with serving about 90 individuals per?
No, that's
This program year.
This program year, we had a funding cut. So our budget, I think, was 944,000. So that reduced the number of families we could serve in all of our counties.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But you served 187 families, number of families, members served. That seems like a good job.
Yeah, in 17, 18, yes.
Uh-huh. And so we see the achieved numbers. Do you have targets? Like, how are you doing in meeting your target?
We do have targets, but it's collective for the 4 counties.
I see.
And we met or exceeded most of the targets that we had last year. I think the one area that we did not achieve was the total number of enrollments. And that was attributable to our new referral process. So we are on track this year for exceeding our objectives.
Okay, great. Well, the work you're doing is helping to reduce community stress, right?
And we did, Natasha pointed out, we did meet our enrollment objective for Durham specifically.
Great, great. Good to know. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much, and we'll look for the follow-up information to Terry, and then that she can also forward on to us with the announcement about the openings, and just your contact information for residents, and then also a list for us of the number of openings and who your current referrals are, and then we can follow up on that.
Yes, ma'am.
And
Thank
then
you
also
so
the
much.
information that Commissioner Howerton wants to share about her summit. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the discussion of Durham County Public Art Policy Study draft document. And we have Harry Manns here with us, who's our Deputy Director of Engineering and Environmental Services, and Linda Seguero, who worked on the initial document that we received. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. We're delighted to be before you tonight. You know, after being asked to include more and more public art into our projects, you asked us to take a look at a study. And Linda is always humble, but I'm ecstatic to say she did a stellar job in providing this information, looking at lessons learned from other communities. So what we're here for tonight is to give you the opportunity to ask questions, have some dialogue from that information. Hopefully you've had ample time to review it, and I'll turn it over to Linda so she can certainly provide that dialogue, the opportunity for that, and then we'll talk about the recommendations that we learned or that were result of this study. Linda?
Good evening. I'd like to start by asking if any of you have questions on the document. When we spoke last, it was on the one-on-ones, and all you had a chance to look at was the executive summary. So the document is considerably more involved than that one sheet. So this would be a good opportunity if you have any questions. Yes.
Thank you for doing this report for us. I found it very interesting to read. I guess my question, well, I just want to say that I have a little background I'd like to share, and that is that, and the manager probably remembers this, but About 14, 15 years ago, when we were discussing with the city raising the money for DPAC, we decided to increase the hotel motel occupancy tax, or to request our General Assembly to raise it by 1%. And in the process of doing that, we realized we were going to start levying it, but the city didn't actually need the monies for about a year. We levied a little earlier than it was absolutely needed for the debt service, which was what we were funding. And there was concern in the cultural arts community in Durham about the opening of DPAC. They were going to kind of suck up all the oxygen, that they would make it harder for existing cultural institutions to survive. To make a long story short, we ended up using the bonus money to fund a cultural arts master plan, city-county cultural arts master plan, and we also funded some implementation of that. As part of that, the city and the county appointed a cultural arts commission or board, and they worked with the consultant as they were doing the plan, and then also on the implementation. A remnant of that group still exists. I guess they're now more a city committee, commission, or board. And there's a public art subcommittee of that original committee. I wanted to give you that framework because there is some history of the city and county collaborating on cultural arts. And I know that the Cultural Arts Board in past years, maybe as long as 18 years ago, took up the subject of public art and actually wrote a short report to us about the need for public art and wanted, more public art in the community. They made some proposals. So long story short, some of my thoughts or questions would be the consideration at this point in time of looking at doing this effort, public art effort, jointly, possibly with the city. And I don't know if you've had any discussions with your peers in the city about that. I did notice that among the surveyed communities, there was only one county involved, and that was a city-county effort. So, this tends, because I think public art generally is going up in urban areas, it tends to be more of a city thing. And it seems to me, and again with the history, possibly makes sense that we might want a joint venture with the city and possibly work with this existing public art committee. And then I have one other thought. Did you discuss this at all with Sherry DeVries, the executive director of the Arts Council? Because they also have been engaged quite a bit on public art. And I did have a conversation with her, and she pointed out to me that in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, they actually use their entity that's similar to our Arts Council to help implement their work around public art. So those are some of my questions and comments about this.
And I'll just piggyback on that. We've actually, I know that Perry actually partnered with the city on our sculpture across the street. I mean, you could probably talk more about that, Perry, but I think that the existing committees that work on this in the community and that you partnered with the city, that they helped you with the process. I mean, maybe you could talk about what happened with the sculpture, our sculpture across the street.
Sure.
Yeah.
So basically, we went through our normal RFQ process. And again, you're right, Mr. Jacobs. We relied heavily on information we had received from the city of Durham on lessons learned from their work. We did get a unanimous approval from the Public Arts Council, Durham Public Arts Council, as well as HPC, which was a requirement on that project. But more importantly was the lessons that I learned from being a part of the committee for the artwork down at the police headquarters. You know, their process, obviously, they had more familiarity with it. They had online platforms that they used to do solicitations that, in all honesty, they reached a broader audience than we did. And through that, we use that same platform now for the main library RFQ, which is actually, I think, currently with purchasing in preparation for advertisement. So again, you know, we're relying heavily on those. And to touch on your point, Commissioner Redcow, regarding the Public Arts Council, we have spoken to Sherry, but our liaison is basically Chris Ogden, and we rely heavily on him. He was, like I said, instrumental through all of this process. And again, what you're going to hear from us today is a recommendation which will include, you know, bringing them to the table to getting their, and you know, for getting their input, as well as the city of Durham and the committees that have already been established for public art. One of the things I would like to point out, though, is that city and county, we are different, you know. I'm being careful in what I'm saying, but I think there may be an opportunity for us to even build a better mousetrap, so to speak, in terms of what they're doing, because it's not quite an apples-to-apples comparison. You did mention that a lot of the projects that they have are in the city. We're going to have projects that may be outside of the city limits, so we need to sort of think about that, the EMS facilities. I mean, just a lot of different projects that we may have that may be a little unique to the county, so we just need to sort of be mindful of that. I don't know if, I think of getting a consultant on board to sort of help us with the public engagement, to look at the cultural history of Durham, you know, the creativeness, you know, all of those things that make the county unique would be beneficial. So that's what you know, our recommendation is going to be, and I think you can hear more from Linda on that. Question? I did it all.
You did. A collaboration between city and county would be absolutely ideal, and that is precisely what Charlotte Mecklenburg did. The issue of the better mousetrap, what we are proposing to do here is establish a methodology by which a long-term vision is implemented. What the city is doing right now is putting art in public places, and those two things are completely different from each other. Charlotte, Seattle, Cary, Raleigh, all of those places engaged the services of an outside consultant to study the community, do outreach, do surveys, take the entire process out of the governmental, the political realm. And by educating and outreaching with the public already had the buy-in when the art appeared. So it took controversy out of the process entirely. That is not the model the city is using. I'd love for the city to do this with us.
Well, that's a very good point. But, you know, over 85%, last time I looked, and that was a while ago, and it may be higher now, over 85% of our population lives within the city limits. Only about 14% lives outside. And so it seems like before we do a study, we should at minimum discuss this with the city and also the Arts Council in terms of an approach that might be comprehensive and build off of the artistic expertise that we already have, so that the RFP is structured in a way that makes sense. With all due respect, I mean, we don't have any artists on staff, do we? I'm just saying that it seems like we could, or we could and we should discuss this with our city council friends and the Arts Council.
Can I just
before-
interject? I think when you say the Arts Council, there are a lot of other stakeholders who are involved in public art, and I don't want to say just single out the Arts Council. There's already a structure right now that includes the Hayti cultural arts community. There are many other art stakeholders, and I don't think we want to pick out one particular. We have to be really sensitive to that there's already a very actually rich process already happening where there are many different stakeholders who are involved. And so I don't want to start picking out one of them
Okay.
to help lead this.
But I do think we should talk with the city, because for us to do this across the whole community without the elected officials representing the city, as I say, it just doesn't make sense, because they represent 85% of the people, the same people we represent. And we should at least see whether they want to participate, in my opinion, before we go off and do this. And also given the history that we've worked together. I mean, that cultural arts master plan, I don't know if you've seen it, but it covered just so much. It was really an incredible report when it was done.
Commissioner, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that would be one of the recommendations that we would hear, would be to partner up with the city. But Chair Jacobs makes a very valid point. We don't want to exclude anyone, and so that's why we wanted to make sure that we had the right public outreach, the right stakeholder input, and we wanted to gain that because, like I said, without bringing everybody that's involved to the table, we don't want to create a fiasco where we, like I said, excluded somebody even if it was in it. So that's where we're trying to go with.
I want to just get input from other commissioners because this is an important discussion, and I think staff is looking for direction. This came up during our budget hearings, and they've been waiting, and we definitely want to move forward in one way or another with this. So I want to make sure everyone else has input. Commissioner Howerton.
Button is turned off. I go along with staff that we can't exclude others in the community. We've got a lot of people that are involved in the arts in Durham, and we have to be inclusive. There are the History Hub is doing the 100th year anniversary, and there are a lot of people at the table around that. So I think we just have to let staff do what they need to do to bring us what we need to move forward.
Commissioner Carter.
So, first of all, this is a fantastic report. Thank you for it. Very clear, and it helped me understand that there's a difference between sort of a process for selecting the art and having this sort of comprehensive public art policy, which it sounds like from your description really, and from reading this, really does include the sort of the development of a vision and a mission, and it's more than just how we're going to select the art. And I remember when we started talking about this, it seemed like the discussion started because we wanted to know, did we have a, a process in place for how we make these selection decisions when we're putting art on our public properties. So I guess, I'm rambling a bit, I guess I'm a little unclear as to whether or not the consultant would be brought on to help us develop this mission, vision, sort of long-term vision, really, of what we want the public art scene to be in Durham County, or would it be to refine our process for selecting the art? I assume we have that sort of in place now, just by virtue of what's been done across the street, for example, and now again with the library. And then I think we need to decide, well, what is it we need at this point in time? Do we need more than a process for selecting art pieces, or do we need this vision, that involves community engagement more broadly? I guess I'm a little confused. I will say that I do think it makes sense as much as possible for city and county to work together on things, and so I would certainly hope that it would be part of whatever we do going forward. And also take advantage of any infrastructure that's already in place. You all have laid out boards and committees and plans I didn't know we had, so trying to figure out how to optimize the current partners, current infrastructure. But you need to hear from us as to what we want. What do we want, y'all?
So I'm
sorry.
Commissioner Howard.
So I do have one question. What happened to the plan that we had? Does that need to be updated? Is it, what happened with that plan? Is it no longer useful? What?
Cultural arts plan is a huge umbrella.
Right.
And public art is one small subsection of it.
Okay.
So
a cultural arts plan.
Yeah, the culture.
Public art policy would be part of that.
To my knowledge, we don't have a public art policy.
We don't have a,
right.
Okay. And the other question was, and we don't have to get into it right now, but when you mentioned that there were some things that were different for the county than with the city, so at some point I'd like for you to lay those out for us so that we know what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, and we don't have to do it tonight.
And Commissioner Carter, in answer to your question about the purpose of the outside consultant, yes, they would develop what Durham is, what Durham wants, what do we want to say through our art now and in the future. They also would develop methodologies. They would recommend processes. They would recommend what the bodies are that do the administration and how the selection process would work. And that's all based on what that vision is and what they learn from us during the study. So it would be basically a complete recommendation package where they would recommend structure as well.
So, do you have any follow-up questions?
How much would it cost and how long would it take?
We are not completely certain, but we know that the process takes somewhere between a year and 18 months. And we're sort of basing off of what we're doing with DFI on the 300, 500, that it would probably be in that price range, probably in the $100,000 range. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I guess this is something that I feel very passionately about. This came up because we've been kind of ad hoc doing public art. It's a requirement of the UDO when we have monumental buildings. So we've been kind of doing this very ad hoc, and our staff doesn't have the capacity. I know that they've done a great job trying to, meet the requirements of the UDO, but this is really important. First of all, we don't even have right now a policy related to how we fund public art. So I guess one question I have is if we're going to do some type of a study, I would like to see us still move forward with some type of funding mechanism to put in place as soon as possible, whether, looking at what other communities do. Usually it's like a 1% or some certain percentage that it's allocated when there's a renovation or a new building. We can look at best practices and what other communities do, but I think we need to implement that sooner rather than later. So I would want to hear just recommendations about that. But I think the second thing is we do need to move forward with some solution, because our staff doesn't have the capacity to do this. So whether we partner with the city, but I think what staff is saying is that they would like to do this in some type of a thoughtful way that does include community input, because this is using public resources. So I think what you're hearing from our board is that we'd like to do it, but we would prefer to somehow collaborate with the city and look at something where we are creating an integrated process or plan with them, if that's possible. Because at the end of the day, I don't think we want to be stuck with creating our own public art department.
Before he answers that, I want to ask the manager a question.
Yeah.
Months ago, I brought this same conversation up, Mr. Manager, and you've said that something about this, it was in the plan to do the research for us, to do an arts, to do the research for it. Now, I don't remember the exact words, but is this the same conversation that we were having then?
Yes, as Commissioner Carter has pointed out, this emanated as a result of the selection and citing of the art piece across the street at Admin 2. And staff was asked at that point to essentially go and look at drafting an arts policy for us, since we were operating in such an ad hoc fashion. To that end, obviously, we have a number of capital projects that are, in fact, coming down the pike in downtown, to include 300, 500 block of East Main Street, obviously our library downtown, and, other public facilities that we will be moving forward with. And so the initial thought process was for staff to come up with, I guess, some guiding policy or document that would help us think through, how we proceed going forward in the future as it related to
I think that's what you were saying then, because I'd been asked by several members in the community, when were we going to do something that would give us a guiding point around the cultural arts? And that's why I asked at that point. And so I'm gathering that this conversation is ongoing from that conversation.
I just wanted to finish what my comments before is that this is a big deal because, as we read in the report, there's so many dimensions to public art. I mean, and community engagement is really important. I know I have a little personal experience here because my daughter worked for a year and a half for the city in their public art department, and so there were a lot of issues about including people, how things are advertised, and making sure that local artists have the opportunity, not just, there's a lot of sensitivity around making sure that we have, we're yes, getting international and national people, but also having room at the table for local people, who's making the decision, how is it being judged? These are really sensitive issues. And so the process is really important, and also understanding what are the priorities. There's the whole aspect of workforce development. For artists, this is how they make their living. Do we want to be promoting local people in one sense, because this is a job for people. So there's the public history aspect, as Commissioner Howerton was mentioning. We've been, integrating public history like we did across the street with, when in our new buildings, we have the public health exhibit in our Health and Human Services building. So this is very complicated, and I do think we need to do it right. So I guess, do you feel like there's a way to move forward, possibly working with the city, that maybe we're not looking at $100,000 or something that might be a little bit more scaled back? I think, and taking 18 months, I don't know. Do you think there's some kind of compromise that we can come up with on this approach, Mr. Manager?
Madam Chairman, let me offer this. As opposed to us sort of speculating and guessing, perhaps the appropriate thing to do would be to place this item on a joint city-county committee meeting for a in-depth discussion and to see where we can go from there.
A good idea.
Do too. Yeah.
Okay, we can do that. Our next meeting is actually January 8th, so not that far off. But Mr. Manager, what about, I think what's separate is our own policy about how we're going to fund public art. And is that I would like to see us at least be able to move forward with that discussion.
My assumption is that that part of the discussion would be inherent in whatever we decide to conversate with the city about, in light of some of the earlier comments that you've heard this evening regarding population statistics and things of that nature. So I think it needs to be sort of an all-inclusive discussion.
And could that be a part of our discussion at the retreat?
Tomorrow?
I don't.
That agenda is already set.
But I don't.
That's too quick, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't see how what you just said, but how our own policy, it seems to be more related to how we fund our own buildings and our own renovations. I don't see how that has anything to do with the city, because these projects are tied to when we do new construction or renovations.
Well, the reason I think that it needs to be an all-inclusive discussion is because, yes, while we do have our own facilities that we will be moving forward with, if there are, in fact, opportunities for us to think about something that might be a bit more, might have a bit more grandeur than something that we want to sort of do in a vacuum, then I think it's worthy of maybe at least the discussion. And so otherwise, I think we sort of move back to a place of piecemealing a policy or an approach. And what I thought I heard from the board earlier was that we wanted to be all-inclusive and have something that was a bit more comprehensive and perhaps dynamic.
Commissioner, one thing I'd like to add is that we already have a set-aside in the main library renovation project for public art. So we do have some time to elaborate or have that discussion with the city before sort of kicking off another major project that would warrant public arts. So I think the manager's definitely on the right track, and we have some time to sort of better define, where we're going with this. So I think that recommendation is
Commissioner Carter.
So I'm sorry to be dense on this, but it feels, I guess I have a little confusion still, because on the one hand, I feel like we have our own buildings and there are going to be opportunities for public art. And so we would, I assume, want a policy that describes how much we're going to spend, what kind of art, we're willing to invest in, themes. what the methodology for selecting it is, who's involved in all that. Is that what the consultant would help with?
Absolutely. Yes.
Or is the consultant going to do much more than that? They're going to, because I feel like I could sit down and write something right now about that, but I know it's not something that's inclusive of the community, but it would at least be a starting point. And it wouldn't cost $100,000.
That would be a major part of it, Commissioner, but the main thing is that the public outreach, is that's what we want to make sure that we cover. And getting the consultant on board, like Linda said, they would provide the online surveys, they would make sure that we were all inclusive and had input from everyone on this. Because, again, it's a community decision, and as the manager always says, we want to make sure we don't make a decision in a vacuum, so that's what we were trying to accomplish.
And would we be asking questions like, do you want public art? What do you want your public art to reflect? You know, are there certain themes that you think are important? Do you want it to be educational? Do you want it to include workforce development? Where do you want? I mean, are those the kinds of things that we need to figure out? I guess that's what I really don't know. What do we need to figure out?
Absolutely. You're thinking along the lines that we've been thinking for some time now about this issue. And those are the questions that need to be answered. We need to define what, as Linda said, a long-range plan or long-range vision for Durham's public art needs to be. That's simply what we were trying to do.
And in the meantime, do we have a process? We must.
We have improved our process. Like I said, based on our experiences with working with the city, I think we got a solid process in line for the main library, which is the next project, you know, in the hopper for us.
Right.
So again, after that, we have some time to sort of work through this and get more definitive with the.
And one other point on that, what we're trying to do is develop and adopt a policy that will avoid the mistakes that other people made. And the Charlotte example is perfect for that. I mean, they had world-class artists, but the process was seen as political, and there was no community engagement at all until the design was presented on the media and it was shot down twice. And they seriously considered eliminating public art at that time until they made the decision to go with the consultant, take it out of politics, have it be a third-party recommendation, and then set up the strategy that they're using now, which is that it is all administered through the Arts and Sciences Council. So it's not county planning, city planning, making those decisions. It's a panel of experts that's been hired to do that.
So I just want to point out on page 28 of the report, I thought there was a great statement about the purpose of public art. Now, this is, of course, just one articulation, but I really liked what this person had written. And, you know, they talk about how public art can give a sense of meaning to place, can create rootedness, enliven streets and neighborhoods. It can tell the history. It can be a common language. It can transform people's day-to-day experiences. It can foster a sense of pride, expose conflicts, you know, celebrate people who haven't been celebrated. You know, it just goes on. And so I think that's where we need the community engagement. We need to hear from the community about what they think our policy should be, what our priorities should be. But I would just say to staff, if you could please do, if we're going to bring this up at the joint city-county meeting, that beforehand you, Mr. Manager, and staff have some preliminary conversations, because if they're not interested, there's no point, you know, in us pursuing this jointly. So I think, you know, there maybe needs to be even some exploration at the staff level. See, I don't know.
Madam Chairman. So we've been working on this for quite some times, and even if we have the conversation with the city and if they're not interested, we still aren't clear about what we're doing at this point. We came seeking essentially direction. We said that we could have this conversation with city, I guess, at the joint city-county committee meeting. I think that's still the appropriate approach. At least, you know, we will have some insight as to what the desire is at the elected level.
So just to be clear then, if it's going to be at that meeting, Harry and Linda, will you be presenting on this and having some proposal that we work together with the city on this? Will that be the approach?
That would be the approach, Commissioner. However, I would put out the caveat that we will sit down with their staff to get their input and see, as the manager said, if they're interested and even what their recommendations would be as well. They may have staff that are present that can do some presentations on their part because like I say, they've been at this game a lot longer than we have.
Right, so there'll be some work done. That's what I was getting at, just that we do some groundwork before that discussion. Okay. I think we're ready to move on from this item.
I have one.
Okay, yes, Commissioner Carter.
Request. I don't know if anyone else thinks they need this, would it be possible for you all to flesh out a little bit more of what the consultant will do? And I'm thinking they're going to do things that are like on page 29, but I just think that would be helpful. It would be helpful for me. A few others are nodding.
And I think there's a fair amount of work that needs to go on, obviously, between the two staffs in preparation for that conversation. So I would ask that we look at the date, just in case their staff's not ready, by the next city-county committee meeting, but perhaps next year, the first one next year.
Okay.
In the meantime, do we have the capacity, the staff capacity to manage the decisions that have to be made at the library and the other locations? Is that part of this, is that we need more staff support with that?
We think we can pull it off. The big decision will be, again, commissioners, with you all. You know, just like we presented, you know, the public art that we did across the street. Once we go through the solicitations, we will have to bring, you know, any design, any fabrication contracts to you all, as well as your buy-in as to what the concepts will be for the public art, be it exterior and interior. So the big decision lies with you all with the current process.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, yuck, yeah.
So related to that, though, Perry, can we look at, again, getting some help? I mean, like you said, you were part of the panel for the police headquarters, and I think they had a very good process.
Absolutely.
With that, and we want to make sure we really have a deliberative process.
You got it. A lot of those people that participated on the committee for the police headquarters have volunteered or requested that they be a part of the main library renovation. We'll rely heavily on them.
And there are a lot of library stakeholders.
Absolutely.
And then they need to be involved as well. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you so much.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is about federal legislative goals. This kind of caught us by surprise. We kind of missed the boat on this a little bit, and there's a deadline by the end of this month to give input to NCACC about any federal goals that will be presented by NCACC at the NACO Legislative Conference, March 2nd through 6th, 2019 in Washington, D.C. So what we have is just some suggestions from staff, and I know we have some staff here who can speak on specifically on these items. And we have Fire Chief Needham and Jim Groves here, and I think one of the items is specifically you could maybe speak to, maybe if you all want to come up and describe these recommendations to us. I guess it's related to the fire department and retirement system.
Good evening. We're facing a situation, as most of you know, everywhere, volunteers are kind of dwindling out. So we're looking at putting on part-time paid guys. We're into that situation. Now we're looking at putting on full-time paid staff. We cannot get full-time paid staff in the local retirements because it's a IRS rule. And back in 2009, 2010, when I was second vice president of the Chiefs Association, we went to the state and we requested to get the local volunteer fire departments, the nonprofits, where they could participate. And we was told it was an IRS ruling. It was sent to Washington, D.C. We went up to Washington and talked to our legislators up there. But what we found was the North Carolina representatives didn't have enough power to introduce something because it didn't affect all 50 states. It's more of a North Carolina thing. So we've got a joint legislative committee, which is North Carolina Association of Fire Chiefs, North Carolina State Firemen's Association is working hard on it to try to get it to that point. But it's 16 departments that's grandfathered in the state retirement system. So that's where we're standing now. And that time in 2009 and 2010, it didn't affect everybody. But at this point, it pretty well affects every county in the state of North Carolina because as you listen and look around, everybody's putting on paid drivers. Well, if we hire somebody and we can't put them in the state retirement system, what are they doing? They're job hunting to try to get in. So we're training them, we're bringing them in, and they're moving to another job that they can get in the state retirement system. So any pressure that you could put with our local people, and just a lot of times when we go over and speak with them, they say, well, how does the county feel about this? And what I would ask is if y'all would put this on your agenda to push forward to say, hey, we'd like to get this because this is something that will be good for all of North Carolina, not just Durham, but it would really be good for us as we're sitting here struggling now trying to hire people. And, you know, when you tell them it's not a local retirement, they're looking to other departments that do have the local retirement that they can get in, which is understandable. But we just encourage you, if you would, kind of help us along. And we're talking to all of our legislative representatives to try to move this forward. But I know it's going to take more than just, you know, us and just the fire service to get it moved through.
Well, thank you for bringing this to our attention, Chief Needham. And I think this is something that would be attractive to a lot of the counties because there are so many rural counties that are probably having the same problem.
That's correct.
And that they could relate to this. I think what would be great accompanying this language might be, I think, a little bit of the narrative that you just gave us tonight.
Get that.
To accompany that so that we could submit it together, I think would be good. Any other comments? Commissioner Recco?
I just have a kind of grammatical change. Seems like in the second paragraph, the second sentence, it should say, approximately 80% of our nation's land area is protected. It's not population.
Or just take out the S.
Well, but 80% of our nation, it's misleading because it's not, much of the population, at least 50% live in the cities. What you're talking about, I believe, is the geography, the land area of the country, not population.
Right. If it's a city department, they're able to get in the retirement system.
Right,
it's
that's
the
my
ones
point.
that's outside.
This is the volunteers. So I think we can correct it by just saying approximately 80% of our nation's land area is protected by volunteers.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's
So that would fix that. But this is something I believe we've had on an agenda in the past.
2009 and 2010, I think we brought it up and talked about it, and it just kind of, we wasn't able to go nowhere. And what we're finding, I just spoke with a buddy from Kentucky, they're able to get into it. So that's the thing that we're trying to figure out, why some states can get into it and some can't. So,
State issue or federal issue?
well, they're telling us it's a federal issue, but we've got this legislative committee digging hard into it, and I think if, you know, the more we get looking into it to see what's going on, because they told us it was a federal issue. We went to the federal people, and they said they would read it and determine it, but they couldn't give us a time. Well, they still haven't done nothing on it, still hadn't been addressed. And we've went to Richard Burr's office, and we've talked to all of our, tell us everybody's aware of it. We've been talking to them each year about it, and it's just not going nowhere. Somewhere we've got to get something going because it's going to affect all of North Carolina before it's over with. It's affecting us now, Lebanon and Redwood, as we try to move forward. I mean, we definitely need it, and it's all over the state.
Well, certainly with the increasing fires that we're having in this country, it will also become more of an issue. So thank you. And if you could just we'll make those changes and then maybe includes a little bit more narrative, we could send this on to NCACC.
We'll do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have another one here, somewhat related from Mo. I don't know if she's here anymore or if somebody else can speak about this, about federal disaster funding.
This one also I thought needed some grammatical improvement. I was going to suggest in the second sentence, with hurricanes and fires happening back to back, restoring infrastructure, a comma, especially roads, water, sewer, electrical, commercial, schools, residential facilities, comma, poses a severe challenge to many counties. And I thought, then we can say the next sentence, but then I thought we might want to add a sentence about the importance of focusing on resiliency when reconstruction occurs.
Yeah. So who of our staff is can be a substitute for Mo on this?
I think this is one that that the association is already working on. So I think it needs to be combined with what Kevin is already working on rather than creating something new.
And is he working on it at the federal level, not just the state level?
He's working on it at the state level, but if you would want the language to be probably the same or similar rather than changing it altogether. So if you don't know what he's got already in plan, I think we need to combine them, or at least have a conversation with him to find out what the language is for the state of North Carolina.
So are we adopting federal legislative goals that then are going to go to NCACC and have to be approved or not?
Right.
Like we've just done with the North Carolina legislative goals.
Right.
Yeah.
And what will actually happen is when our goal goes in, they'll look at whatever they get from the counties, what ideas they may have had, and they may do some combining and tweaking. So I think it's okay for us to send.
They have a committee. They have a committee that's going to be working on them, and they'll tweak them.
So they don't have those meetings where we all go and,
not
those steering committees.
Or
they don't have that
not for the federal goals. It's usually for the statewide goals. Yeah.
What I might suggest here is that we even change how the sentence begins, because it's beyond hurricanes and fires. Really, we should say, with the severity and frequency of natural disasters. Comma, or given it would be given the severity and frequency of natural disasters, comma, then proceed on. So,
Claudia, are you taking notes on this? Okay. So Claudia, you will make these changes.
No, we'll get the staff to listen to the tape and do the wordsmithing and get it submitted.
Yeah. So we just want to.
Can you forward them on to Kevin?
Yes.
Well, we first have to approve this as a board, and then Deborah will send them on to the association. So, we have to approve these legislative goals with the corrections that have been recommended, and then Deborah will submit them. by the end of the month.
Is Deborah going to be out for a few days?
We'll get the submission done.
She's going to be
Dawn is the Deborah.
She's going to be the Deborah, okay.
Okay, so Dawn will submit them. So I'd entertain a motion that with the recommended changes that, yes, Commissioner Carter.
Really, we only have two? Is
Well,
that
we can add more if we
Well,
want to.
I don't know, maybe
This is what Deborah put it out to
I
the
know.
staff,
yeah.
and this is what came back from staff.
So do we want to have one related to SNAP benefits in the Farm Bill? I mean, maybe that's going to be decided before we lobby. I'm not sure about the timing of these things, but we passed that resolution asking for,
SNAP?
asking, to maintain the SNAP, level of SNAP benefits, and to please approve, a new Farm Bill that did that very thing.
That's a great suggestion.
No, there's one, and there's probably a dozen others like that I just couldn't think of.
Medicare expansion. Didn't we
Like
have
what?
we had the SNAP, we had that one last time on our agenda.
Okay, maybe we could just take it then.
We could just use the same one.
And if not, we could take language from our resolution, probably.
Yeah.
It sort of depends on whether we want to be more specific to Durham or more specific to the nation or what, but.
Okay, so we want to move forward our past language related to the SNAP bill or whatever's in our resolution, some form of that we already passed.
Yeah, is there someone who could work that up?
Any other ones?
Medicare expansion? Expansion of Medicare?
Well, that's a state decision, right? Medicaid expansion.
I just want us to always remember there's a bigger bang for a buck when we're talking about federal, if we are talking more than one county pushing it.
Everybody should be pushing
Yeah,
SNAP.
there's just
Mm-hmm.
bigger bang for the buck.
Okay, so we're moving forward those three. I mean, I think unfortunately, we don't have time tonight and we don't have the staff kind of input that we need because I made a list related to transportation funding, money for medically assisted treatment for substance and medication misuse, mental health funding, housing funding. I think there are a lot of things that we could recommend here. So just whether we are able to.
When's the deadline?
The end of the month. And we'd have to actually approve them.
The end of November? Well, then let's go with these two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
think,
and the SNAP.
yeah, I think unfortunately we don't
have the time.
We don't have the time to do what we really need to do with these. So so we're going to move forward with the two that we already have related to resiliency and our volunteer firefighters and the SNAP resolution, which we already have written up. So
I would move the two as amended and the SNAP.
Second.
okay, all those in favor, please say, moved by Commissioner Recca, seconded by Commissioner Howerton. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And we'll move those goals forward. Okay, we have quarterly management report from staff. So, Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the board. I am going to wait for staff to get the PowerPoint up, and while that is in fact coming up, I do have a couple of editorial comments. The first, of course, is I am delighted to present to you the next evolution of our quarterly management report. And just prior to me getting into this presentation, I want to take the occasion to recognize Dion Hines and certainly all of our general managers and chief of staff and staff all across the enterprise for the good work that they've essentially put forward in bringing forth this next evolution of this report. In addition to that, I want to take this occasion to also thank the board members for taking their time and going through the report and providing some constructive feedback in order to make this a much better document. And with that being said, I will direct my attention to the slide presentation. So let's go to the first slide, Dion. So, well, maybe, okay, here we are. So obviously, in light of where we have been going in respect to our managing for results strategy, I want to insult your intelligence essentially by talking about the work that's gone into the strategic plan refresh or managing for results at this point. But I think we are solidly in a place whereby the integration of our strategic plan and our managing for results strategy has come together very nicely, as you can see from the model that's illustrated there. When we think about and take sort of stock of where we come from, as we started down our strategic plan refresh and instituting our managing for results strategy, we began understanding that a part of that big work, particularly under the management quadrant of the MFR model, entailed doing quarterly reporting. A couple of years ago, when we rolled out our first quarterly management report, this is essentially what it looked like. You see that outline there, and we did try and fashion this report basically based on a lot of key projects that we were in fact working on at that time. Fast forward, what we have been able to do is over time a little bit better job aligning our strategic plan objectives with our work plan, which in effect gets us in a more strategic place in terms of the work and the priorities that this board and our community sets as a result of the strategic plan. So when you look at our work plans now, much like I sit with the Board of Commissioners to draft my work plan, those work plans cascade down into the organization, to the general managers, to the chief of staff, and we look at those respective objectives that are in there. They're categorized, and making certain that we become more strategic in the work that we do. Tomorrow we're going to spend a bit more time during the retreat to talk about honing in and focusing a little bit greater in respect to strategic priorities. And so this is one more step that moves us in that direction. So today, it's fairly safe to say that our managing for results strategy, our strategic plan, and our work plan alignment are in fact very well integrated. We made, let's go back to that earlier slide, Dion. We made a concerted effort to make sure in integrating these reports that some of the work that's going on in the background, just as a case in point, through the investments that we have made in technology like Power BI, like ClearPoint, it affords us the opportunity to not only just provide you with a report that looks at essentially a bunch of words, but we're getting more in the space and place whereby we can take data that is being churned out by our Power BI system now, along with our ClearPoint system, and make meaningful decisions. And so I've already talked about the work plans and where we are moving in that direction in respect to departments. And the whole idea and notion is for us to ultimately get to that place where we've got measurable outcomes, and it is in fact the data that's driving our decision. And as we go through the various evolutions of producing these quarterly reports, the whole notion and the idea is to make certain that we have meaningful data in the reports that tell us something about the decisions that we make, and hopefully better position us to make better decisions. When you look at the next generation of the quarterly report, now essentially what you will see is a project highlight page. On the project highlight page, on our online version, we have the respective hyperlinks that tell you a great deal about the respective projects that are going on, who's responsible for those projects, and what the respective categories are. The far right portion of that slide is essentially an appendix that shows up in the back of the report that gives a good project description in respect to what is happening there, and more importantly, to talk about responsible parties and some critical data around metrics. So when you look at the report in general, you'll see a goal overview, you'll see the project highlights, you'll see community indicators, and we'll get even more refined in that space, along with the appendix, which is a project summary that looks specifically, as I said earlier, at project results, what the service levels and service qualities are, as well as strategic impact. I'm also happy to report that through, once again, the investments that we've made through our Power BI system, as well as ClearPoint, we have our 20-plus hundred, it's about 2,500 metrics now warehoused in this reporting system. And so for those citizens who are at home tomorrow, this information will be uploaded to our intranet as well as our internet, and it will afford all of us the opportunity to go into these respective dashboards under those strategic goal areas through the hyperlinks and give you a little bit better insight about the work and the priorities under those respective goal areas. And once you get to those hyperlinks, you'll begin to see reporting tools and information like this, the graphic details along with explanations of the respective measures and or metrics. The other good fortune that we have is essentially this reporting tool through our Power BI work that's gone on. If you look very closely at this graphic, and when you think about our budget information, we have the ability to drill down in respective spaces throughout our organization now on the expenditure side of our ledger as well as the revenue side of our ledger. We can look at 5-year trends and look at the overages or the underperforming budgets and make some critical decisions in that particular space. We can investigate, our adopted budgets and look at, the personnel and FTEs. And if you go to the far left of that graphic there, we can do this at the department level, but we also have the capability of doing a roll-up and get key information inside county government in respect to what is going on as it relates to our financial systems. And all of these dashboards, again, will be available to the public. That's essentially the last thing I'd want to say about the rollout of this report. And as I said, it will be tomorrow uploaded for the public to see on our website, and they can go to the website, the county's website at dconc.gov. I had the good fortune of having a sort of in-depth conversation with Commissioner Reckow a couple of weeks ago, I think, regarding sort of how we are going about the business of doing this work. And she turned me on to a really good reading source. It's a book called Factfulness by Hans Rollins. And there's also about a 17-minute TED Talk out there. And so that's going to be our next reading assignment. As we are better positioned to churn out a great deal of this data, one of the things that we need to become experts in is understanding and telling us what the data is doing. And in Factfulness, with the subtitle being 10 Reasons We're Wrong About the World and Why Things Are Better Than You Think, Hans essentially looks at things like the world birth rate, and he says that it's in fact stabilizing. He looks at the world life expectancy rates and talks about essentially how those are in fact increasing, as well as the gender gap being almost closed when we think about it globally. And so what we are attempting to do is making certain that as a new organization doing work in this space, we take this data and we are able to interpret it in ways that are, in fact, meaningful and gets us, as I said earlier, to a better place and point that we can do better decision-making based on what the data is, in fact, telling us. This data will be, again, included in these quarterly reports, and this is just the second evolution of this report. And as we get further down the road, we anticipate that we'll be able to produce a third and a fourth generation as well, until we get to that point that the decisions we make are, in fact, scientific. So again, I want to thank you for your indulgence and obviously patience in respect to our ability to get here. Tomorrow, during our retreat, you'll hear a little bit more about this, and we look forward to working with the board and certainly members of our community further to refine this business model. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. I know that you've been working hard on this, and a lot of the staff has been working really hard on this for a long time, so thank you. Just wanted to open it up for any feedback or comments at this point from anyone.
Just to say thank you. I mean, this is a lot of hard work. It's great.
So, Commissioner Carter?
Well, I think it's great. I agree. I think the evolution of the quarterly management reports, as you've called it an evolution, I like how it's evolved. I think it's going to be amazing once I figure out how to follow all the hyperlinks. I've done some of that already. And sometimes I feel like I'm getting where I want to be, and other times I'm not sure, but so I may need a training session in it. Like I've gone to the data deco, whatever, the data deconc.org, dashboard site. But here's one question. I really like everything about how this is laid out. It's a great job. But for example, on page 7, and there are several pages like this, it's the project highlights page. I'm just wondering, when you sort of try to crosswalk this with the strategic plan, and I can see that's what's happening here, how do you decide which strategies under each of the objectives include in the project? And is there a place to go to see all of them? This is most of them, and maybe it is all of them.
No, that's not all of them. That's essentially sort of a high-level overview of selected items that GMs decided to choose from their respective portfolios. You will have drill-down capabilities in our ClearPoint software and some capabilities in Power BI that will afford us, or you or the public, the opportunity to see more in-depth detail.
I mean, it looks like we'll be able to, go to one of the strategic plan goal areas, and then see what the community indicators are, but also drill down further. Go to, the objective, and then look at the strategies, and those have metrics as well.
There you go.
And I think we'll be able to see those too. Is that right?
That's ultimately where we're going.
We're headed there. Are we there yet? We're not quite there.
We're not quite there.
Okay.
We're close.
Yeah, I think so. But anyway, I can't wait to explore this more, and I think it could be just a wonderful resource for us and for our community once it's sort of fully rolled out.
Any other comments? So I guess I have a question. I guess the project summary pages, I know this is a work in progress. What I think would be helpful to see more of on this page eventually is more of the data also, just because there's a lot of description here. But I guess what I kind of miss from before we had things like what are the resources that we're allocating to this area, and what are the measurements, or what is the goal, and then where are we at? Because so for that, the round circle with the green, that For some of the measurements, I think it is helpful, but some of them, it just says continuous and ongoing, so that doesn't really tell me anything.
Those are just project status reports right now, but what you're talking about is precisely where we're evolving to.
Okay, so we'll get there. I think probably for, for us and for the public, if people are trying to look at this quickly, I think even just having less text and more kind of bullet points and some of the data that people are looking for is just, because I think these could be kind of like a quick look. And so I think it doesn't necessarily have to have as much of the.
And just be reminded that at the very front of the document, that's where we sort of highlight a lot of our high-level community indicators, which is what we had talked about before as we sort of refined and worked through work plans. And so, again, a lot of this work gets cascaded down from our work plans, just as a reminder.
And so these indicators we're going to see soon up on the dashboard.
They may already be up.
Everything will be up tomorrow.
Okay.
The interesting thing about the community indicators being in the is they're probably not going to change. Which makes me wonder if, and if one looked at this online, then what they could say, okay, well, these community indicators are great, but they may say, but I saw that last quarter. What I really want to know is some of these more short-term that probably your department and that would be.
Commissioner Carter, I think you need to pull your mic up.
Sorry.
I don't think everyone's hearing you.
I think Rendell heard me. Anyway.
Well, for the tape and for the.
Yeah. Well, I was just making the point that the very high-level community indicators probably aren't going to change from quarter to quarter. And yet that's what we're including, and it is good to see those. But there might be some indicators that are going to be demonstrating that we're making progress, right? Which eventually, maybe over 5 years, will lead to a lower poverty rate. But we're not going to see a lower, I just don't think we're going to.
And as we update the quarterly report, when you think about the connections, if you will, between the strategies that are being employed in order to sort of effectuate, and I'll just pull one out of the air, the poverty rate. The whole notion and idea is, yes, to be able to look at that report eventually and understand what the strategies are that are linkages to those larger community indicators. And we can flesh that out going forward in the future to demonstrate what those strategies are. And just as importantly, understand what the metrics and the data is telling us, because it does not necessarily mean that we are employing all of the right strategies. And that's the learning and evaluation component of that managing for results quadrant. But yes, you're exactly right.
All right. Well, thank you. Commissioner Howerton.
I just want to say one more thing, Mr. Manager. The more I read through this, as I said, we've come a long way from having a strategic plan and really having the managing for results. Really, as a coach, as an executive coach in the business world, this lays out what it is that you say you're going to do. You can have a plan, but if you don't have any tangible goals, it says nothing. But this gives us tangible, and it gives the community tangible things that we're attempting to do. So I just want to say thank you again for you and your staff for just really laying this out. And we know that this is a document that is not going to stay in this manner. It's always going to be changing. So thank you again, and thank you, staff, for working on this.
Well, again, I want to thank the staff, and I also want to thank the board for their input, and much better document as we progress.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is our commissioner comments, which we've been delaying for several meetings now. So maybe we can briefly share anything that we've been wanting to share for the past few meetings. Commissioner Carter?
Frankly, I'd rather not have a comment and go home a little earlier. If I were going to make a comment, it would be something along the lines of, I look forward to our continued discussion about adding another work session so that our meetings aren't all so long.
Thank you. I wanted to share with everyone something that has come out of our joint Metropolitan Planning Organization meetings, which is all of us working together with, the capital area, MPO, and our Durham, Chapel Hill, Scarborough, Orange County, MPO, which is trying to work together on some legislative goals related to transportation. I'm just going to hand this out to everyone. I want to keep everyone in the loop about it, but we just feel like we need to be working together to advocate at the state level with North Carolina Department of Transportation and also state policies related to transit and transportation. So I made copies for everyone, and let me pass that down. And I'll give one to Commissioner. I'll leave it here for him. Commissioner Reckow already has this, but this is for Commissioner Howard. And give it to her. Also wanted to just share with everybody, I'm going to send out my notes, but Commissioner Howerton and I went to a great session on a regional resiliency plan. Very exciting to think about how we can work together. I'm sorry Jim Groves isn't here anymore, but how we can work together on resiliency and how we need to be collaborating across counties. And one of the things that I learned is that Moody's, and I wish the manager hadn't walked out now, but that Moody's is going to start looking at resiliency in terms of their rating system. Because the fact is that when you look at Hurricane Florence, the numbers were really astounding, but basically in terms of the damage for the state of North Carolina between what was covered by people's personal insurance versus what was covered by FEMA, there was a huge gap, and I can pull up my notes when everyone else is talking, but I want to relay the data related to it. But basically, there's a huge gap, which ends up being a liability at the local level. When we look at damage to people's homes and our infrastructure, will end up basically being by default incurred at the local level. And so, so we need to be taking this very seriously because it is something that is going to be part of how we're assessed in terms of the financial strength of our community. So the next steps are, this group is going to be meeting. I'm going to send you all my notes, and Tobin is going to come and present to us in the coming year. Mr. Manager, what I share with everyone is that we were informed at the resiliency assessment for the Triangle region that Moody's is going to be starting to look at whether you have a resiliency plan as part of how they evaluate your financial stability, because of storms ends up, the cost is at the local level. So
we heard about that a little bit this summer.
okay, so you're already on to that, and I'll pass it on to you, Commissioner Reckow.
Thank you. Let's see. I think one of the more interesting special meetings I've been to in the past year was the Urban Land Institute's meeting on growth trends and affordable housing. Commissioner Carter attended that also. The highlight in terms of trends is that the Raleigh-Durham area is recognized nationally by the Urban Land Institute as having the third highest prospects for real estate growth in the country. I say that because it's important then as it relates to the need to think about affordable housing, which was highlighted later in the day because that was the focus of much of the work. But they also noted the need for us to be investing in transit. So this is a time where it's very important for us to be planning for the future because we are expected to experience such a high level of growth relative to other metro regions in the
Commissioner Howardson.
I said the only thing that I have is the trip to DC. Was it last week? I forget the date. And having an opportunity to visit with our Congress folks around transit, and then the other one was counties. The NACO sponsored the trip for me to have the conversation around healthy counties. And the conversation came up around opiate and the difficulty that is being held across the country in people's health around prevention, and there's not enough funding that's being allocated for prevention. And then some of the unique strategies that other counties are using up in the mountains in Virginia. They're using some really innovative things around as far as prevention. And I can get those to you. That was a major one. And then they had several doctors on the phone talking about what's going on across the country. Durham doesn't seem to be impacted as much as some of our other counties, North Carolina, as well as some of the other counties across the country. But it is very much impacting a lot of people. And so that was the conversation that we had. And then I had to get out of there and catch a plane to come home because I didn't want to get snowbound.
Thank you. I just pulled up the numbers. The Hurricane Florence is having a $17 billion impact on the state, but there will be a $9 billion gap that is not covered by either federal and state assistance is $3.3 billion, $4.8 billion will be covered by the insurance industry, but it leaves $9 billion not covered, which falls to local counties. So let's see, last thing we have is our boards and commission appointment. Oh, we didn't have any consent agenda items, so hold. Thank you. I have a question, Terry and Attorney Seiler. I know, what is our attendance policy about number of meetings missed? Because I did notice that when I looked at some of our appointees, that there was a number of absences, and I didn't know at what point do we kind of give people a heads up about that and just encourage them to try to attend. What is our existing policy?
Let me take a look at that. Your rules regarding citizen appointments. Let's see. clerk to the board shall inform all boards and appointees of the attendance policy. If an appointee has absences excused or unexcused, which constitute more than 50% of the meetings in any calendar year, or 3 consecutive excused absences, or 5 consecutive excused absences in any calendar year, he or she is obligated to resign.
Okay, so I think the ones that I saw were 40%, not 50%. So, okay, thank you.
But it may also be incumbent upon the clerk to that board or boards to at least bring to the attention those citizens that they are running the risk of, hitting that 50%
Yeah.
threshold.
Right, we might want to, if it's possible to do that, let them know.
There were just, there were 3, was it 3 each?
2 people. No, there were 4 out of 10 for each people.
4 out of
10
10 meetings.
absences.
Okay.
Madam Chairman. So while we're waiting for the county attorney, I just wanted to remind the board that we will have breakfast in the morning at 8:30 and a 9 o'clock start for our retreat. We'll be located at the Museum of Life and Science and the structure that's located back near the parking deck in the Woodlands.
The Woodlands building.
Is that on the same side that we had it before? In the same
Yeah, I think
building we
it's
had it
same.
before?
It's nice.
The same as last year?
Mm-hmm.
So I was, while we're sitting here, I was going to share with everybody, there was an article that I read about love affair with driving may be stuck in traffic, about how there's a generational gap. Millennials don't see that it's worth sitting in traffic, whereas baby boomers are more comfortable with it. Not worth the expense of car ownership, and traffic becomes even more of a headache. This was a study that was done. And then there was another article I read about how zoning is important, as is common sense. Developers aren't putting high-rise towers around the corner from rows of ranch houses. Where they are putting them are near light rail lines. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the board, I've got the results of your voting. For the Nursing Home Community Advisory Committee, you could select one individual. You've selected Deidre Thornlow. For the Planning Commission, you could select one person. You've selected David Morgan. For the Transportation Advisory Board, you could vote for 3 individuals. You've selected Deanna Horn, Fred Myatt, and Natalie Murdoch. For the Women's Commission, you could select one individual, and you selected Elizabeth Morel. Those are the results of your votes.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Carter, seconded by Commissioner Howerton. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We're unanimously adjourned. See everybody in 10 hours.